Now, isn't that just like our own enemy? You see, instead of looking at who we are and looking at what our purpose is, the enemy allows us to focus on the faults of the leaders or the pastors or whomever is in leadership, or our brothers and sisters. The enemy gets us to take a look at what we're displeased with, all the things that we don't like, all the things that we desire to change. And granted, none of us are perfect. We're striving for perfection. Right. But yet sometimes we do slip up and allow the enemy to take advantage of us. And we talked about it last week. But the enemy doesn't just stop there. He doesn't just allow people to hurt each other, but he uses that hurt to enter in. And what he does to our own minds is he makes us focus in on our displeasure. He makes us zone in all the things that we don't like, all the things that make us upset and make us angry about the leadership or our brothers and our sisters. And when we focus on those things, we forget who we are. For we are the church. Right. For the church is not a building, it's not an edifice, but church means called out ones. Right. And so we are the church. Regardless of our faults, our failures, we are the church. And we have a responsibility to come together and to help each other. Right. But the enemy gets us to focus on all the things that we don't like. Because when we focus on all the things that we don't like, we forget who we are. And so that's what happened with Israel. They forgot who they were. They forgot that it was their responsibility and it was their desire to serve their Lord who had brought them out of Egypt, who had done so many great things for them. They forgot who they were and they focused on themselves. And oftentimes that's our own problem. We're so quick to criticize Israel and so quick to say that they were so wicked and so disobedient, but when we point a finger at someone else, there are 4 fingers pointing back at us. And so we need to reconsider how we are. Right. For too often we focus on ourselves and forget who we are. And so oftentimes people leave a house or they leave an assembly because they've been offended or they've been hurt or something happened or the preacher preached the wrong way or the word came across too strong, and people leave. And when they leave, they think they're just leaving a house or leaving an assembly. But they're putting space between themselves and Christ. For as we said last week, if you don't love your brother, then there's a problem, because we are building fitly framed together. So there should be no holes, no escape route. But when you don't love your brother, you're creating a rift between you and your brother. And so you're creating a rift in the wall of this house. For how can you say you love God whom you haven't seen? No man has laid eyes on God. And how can we say that we've loved him who we haven't seen when we can't even love our brother who we see every day? Amen. The Lord is calling us to love one another, to encourage one another, to forgive one another. Right. But yet we get so hung up on our hang-ups that we think ourselves better because we don't want to forgive, or we don't desire to forgive because we think the hurt that we've experienced is just too much for us to be able to forgive. And so we give space to the enemy to walk right into the kingdom. For he's, as it was said last week, he's looking for an entry point. He's looking for holes. He's looking for cracks in your armor to be able to seep in. And oftentimes when we don't love our brother, we're leaving the door wide open for the enemy to enter in. Man. But the problem is the enemy doesn't just enter in and be satisfied with that. For if we look back at Jeroboam, he knew that if the people returned to Israel, that they would remember who they are. Those precious memories would start to flood back, and that they remember that they are one people, they're one body, they're Israel, they're brother and sister. There should be no separation between Judah and Israel, for they are all one. My God. But Jeroboam was smart, though. He was sneaky but smart, because he knew that the people were used to worshiping. So he couldn't just take them away from that worship, because as we said before, too drastic a change and they'd leave. Too drastic a change and they'd realize that something isn't quite right about the situation. So instead, Jeroboam offered them a cheap substitute under the guise of convenience. What he did was, instead of allowing the people to go to Jerusalem as they had before, is that he created centers of worship for them. But in these centers of worship, he carved these 2 golden calves. He said, here, instead of going all the way to Jerusalem, it's too far, it's too distant. Why don't you just stay here and behold these golden calves that I made, and see the gods that have led you out of Egypt. See the gods that have delivered you right in front of you, so that you don't have to travel anywhere else. You see, Jeroboam didn't change their behavior. He took advantage, rather, of their behavior.
Right.
But all he did was alter the recipient of that praise. You see, Jerusalem or Israel, they had it become habitual. They had become used to praise and used to going into the house of God to offer worship. They'd become so used to that to not worship, to not go into the house would be something too foreign. And so Jeroboam took that and he twisted it by offering this convenient alternative. But I'm telling you, church, there are too many convenient alternatives in the church today. There's so many people who say, well, you don't have to go to church. You don't have to go to a body, but you could just watch me on home at TV and send me your check and I'll pray for you and the Lord will bless you. Just sow into my ministry and the Lord will bless you. And now the new thing is Skyping into church. It's like being there without really being there. And you know, we think, okay, well, you know, I'm still going to church. I'm still worshiping. I'm still doing, you know, I have the Lord in my heart and he knows my heart and he knows that I'm tired this morning and I don't really feel and the kids are bothering me and I don't want to get them dressed and it's snowing outside and I don't feel like leaving my house today. So I'm just going to flip on Benny Hinn or whomever on TV and I'm going to offer my praise that way and I'm good. We have too many convenient alternatives in the church today. But as we said, church means called out ones, the ones who are separated from the world. And so there's something that happens when the called out ones come together. There's something that happens when your praise meets my praise and we come together. For you don't understand, but we didn't just gather at 5787 Gwen Boulevard West this morning. But when we come together with our praise, we are coming into the very courts of heaven. We're walking in heavenly places. And so the presence of the Lord descends, for where 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, there is he in the midst of them. And so when we come together with your faith and my faith and your praise and my praise, when we come together, we worship, we create an atmosphere of praise that the Lord desires to inhabit, for the word says he inhabits the praises of his people. And so when we come together, the Lord is in our midst. But what you have to understand about that is when we are in the kingdom, we are ambassadors in the kingdom. For we didn't just gather for ourselves, for there are still those who have not access to the kingdom. And so we have a responsibility for when we create, when we are here in this place and we're in heavenly places, we offer the opportunity for others to come in. Others who of their own wouldn't be able to access these heavenly places. We give them the opportunity to enter into the very presence of the Most High God. For if you think in the natural, if you go to, if you're looking to go to a foreign country, if you're looking to travel somewhere, if you want to take up residency somewhere, you've got to have the right credentials. You've got to have the right paperwork. So, for instance, if you decide that you're going to go to Australia this morning, it's funny because this one of the things that Lisa texted back in her midst of her travel, she didn't realize that she needed a visa to travel to this other country. There was a requirement, and because she didn't have the proper papers, she had to go to the embassy or the consulate. She had to go to someone who had authority to be able to give her access to get in the place where she wants to go. For herself, she's not an Australian citizen. She has no connection with that place, and so she has no opportunity of herself to be able to get up and go. But she had to go to an embassy or a consulate or some place where someone had the authority to be able to let her in. For you understand that when you go to an embassy, you are entering into the land of that country. For if you go to the Cuban embassy in NDG or the American embassy downtown, once you enter in that building, you're no longer in Canada per se. For that land belongs to that land on which the American embassy sits. It belongs to the United States of America. So when you go in, they just don't let anybody in there. But God, you know, if you've ever gone down on St. Antoine, there you see these big guards with guns because they want to protect their land. That is their piece of land. And if you want to get access, if you want to have access, you've got to see the people who can let you in. You've got to go see the ambassadors to be able to let you in. We this morning in the kingdom are ambassadors. And we have a responsibility, for we're not in this kingdom just for our own sake, but we've been dispatched, if you will. For an ambassador doesn't live in his home country, but he lives in a foreign land. But his purpose in that foreign land is to grant access for those who desire to come to his home country.